Hello and welcome to a new episode of Unsilenced with your host, Justin. And I've just got to say, America, what in the hell is wrong with our justice system? I mean, it has gone completely off the rails. I don't understand how certain things can happen, how certain people can be free on the streets to do whatever they please, and cause just mayhem and viciousness. We just have to keep allowing this to happen. There have got to be some things put into place to prevent heinous crimes from happening. There are plenty of heinous crimes that happen that we can't foresee, but there are others that happen that were absolutely something that could be foreseen. And these are the ones that we need to start taking care of. And this has to happen at the level of legislation. This has to happen at the level of making sure that we don't have laws in place that allow for things to get out of hand and allow for things to happen. So I'm going to be covering 3 different cases in this part of the podcast today that I think shed light on just some of the egregious things that happen because of laws that are in place that need to be looked at in every state. Okay, these are just some examples from some different states, but in all 50 states, legislators need to go in and look at what is actually going on and what these laws are allowing. There are loopholes for criminals in these laws that allow them to commit heinous crimes when they should actually be in prison. Now, there are plenty of other things that happen to people who don't commit as many crimes or who aren't nearly as bad, who have committed one little crime here or there that really get the book thrown at them. And then we see on the flip side others who get chance after chance after chance. And, you know, it's not fair. It's not a soft on crime justice system because they can go after certain people and throw the book at them. And then other people they just turn away from and they allow them to continue to do things that are non-beneficial to the American public and that are frankly dangerous to the American public. So I want to start today with the case of little Logan Tipton, who was killed 10 years ago by a man who is now out of prison after 7 years in prison. Okay, so let me just go through some details. And, this story hadn't been getting traction, but thanks to people like Matt Walsh and others, it has gained a lot of attention. And the White House was even looking into the steps that allowed this man to be free after only 7 years. So on December 7th, 2015, a man named Ronald Exantis had traveled across state lines and broke into a home that where the family was sleeping. So mom was working a very late shift, and so dad had put the kids to bed. Dad was sleeping, and her key had been broken, so he had to leave the door unlocked. And this wasn't, in some metro area. This was out in the country somewhere. And, how many of us have left our doors unlocked in the past, and nothing bad ever happens, especially in an area like this where nothing bad ever does happen. So you don't imagine that it can. And so you continue to just allow this, kind of just comfortable existence and you don't think anything of it because this has probably been done many times. And so this is not the family's fault for this. This is just how things had to happen. So Ronald Exantis apparently had been having some very severe mental health issues this day and ended up leaving his home that he shared with his live-in fiance and traveled across state lines, and very wee hours of the morning ended up going up to this home owned by the Tiptons, and found that this door was unlocked, went in, searched around, saw that the father's and mother's bedroom was on the ground floor, and that the children's bedrooms definitely were upstairs. And so he walks through this downstairs area, goes into the kitchen, grabs a butter knife and a butcher knife. Then he proceeded to head upstairs. Later in testimony, it was claimed that he was delusional and that he thought that he was in an episode of Grey's Anatomy and had to do surgery, and found Logan Tipton, and he began stabbing him in the head multiple times. And for sake of YouTube, I will have to be using certain vernacular that may sound funny, but there are certain things that YouTube allows and does not allow. So bear with me on some of these things. So he claimed that he thought he was doing surgery on Logan Tipton and ended up unaliving him after multiple stab wounds to the head, to the extent that the butcher knife actually bent, which is how hard this attack was. And his sister Coral tried to intervene, and she was hurt. Another sibling was hurt. She called 911. The father heard all of this going on, ran upstairs, and got attacked by Exantis, and ended up pinning him down. While they waited for the police to arrive, which was very quick. And he was obviously hurt as well with these weapons. So very sad. I mean, this should never have happened. So Dean, the father, eventually wrestled Exantis to the ground, and a direct quote about his son, Logan. He was laying there, and I grabbed him. I'm holding him. I'm screaming for help. He's gasping for air. It was 5 seconds after I got my hands on it that he just looked at me. He closed his eyes, and he was gone. I can't imagine that pain. I have 2 children myself, and that is just so sad, so very sad. And right before Christmas, not that any time is a good time, but these kids are getting ready for the holidays. Everybody's happy, and Exantis said that he was drawn to this home because there were Christmas lights on. So this family is just getting ready for the holidays. They're getting ready to just be happy together. School would be letting out in a couple weeks, and they would have the holiday break together, to just be a normal family. So Exantis is arrested. He's still there. So obviously we know this is the person who did this because he's still there. This is the person that attacked. There are many witnesses. And so we go through a trial that took a couple years. And Exantis was found not guilty of murder based on insanity. And then in the same breath, the jury says he is guilty of second-degree assault for attacking the siblings and the father, with the caveat of having a mental health issue. So he can be found guilty for that, but he can't be found guilty for unaliving Logan because he was insane. So this makes no sense to me. How is he insane for part of the crime but not the other part of the crime? You're either insane for the whole thing or you're sane for the whole thing. So he was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the assaults, not for the unaliving of Logan, but for the assaults. So that travesty number one. Number one travesty is right there. And you know what? Maybe he was crazy at this point. I can give you that. I am a past therapist myself. These things happen. But he's not being held on an insanity plea. Even though he's found not guilty, he's not being held on an insanity plea in a mental health institution for life. Actually, he should be for life. If you can be that delusional and that out of your mind to commit a murder, then you should not be able to be free. So here we go, up to a couple weeks ago, 7 years later, he is being released for 6 months of supervised probation and he's chosen Florida to be this spot. 6 months of that, and then he would be a completely 100% free man after serving 7 years behind bars for what he did. So he was insane then. Is he all of a sudden not insane now? I don't understand this. If you're that insane that you're unaliving a child, a 6-year-old child, and attacking his siblings would have killed them, and in fact stated that he was going to kill the entire family. That's what he told Dean Tipton, that he was going to kill his entire family. And so 7 years later, he is out. Because of a loophole in Kentucky law that said that you get a mandatory release on good behavior, parole board be damned. So the parole board technically had no control over whether to keep him in. They wanted to keep him in. And they've been getting threats because he's out, even though it really wasn't on them. However, they never spoke up either. They should have fought this. They obviously saw the danger here, and they're just saying, well, oops, our hands are tied. We can't do anything about this. Well, you probably should have done a little bit more about this. I am not saying that death threats to the parole board is in any way justified, because it's not. But this is a dumb law to allow a man like this out of prison because of good behavior, and it's a mandatory rule that he has to be let back out into society. So he gets paroled to Florida, and he buys a house or rents a house. I'm not sure the exact details there, but anyway, has a domicile that shares a property line with an elementary school. Okay, so here's a man who has unalived a 6-year-old child who is living right across the street from a bunch of other elementary age children. Okay. Your run-of-the-mill sex offender can't live within a quarter mile of a school or a park or anything like that because of laws that are in place. So why is a law not in place for someone who is convicted, well, not convicted, but who has unalived a child? That I don't understand. So I want to get to some video clips, just some short ones that talk about this, and then we get some responses from Dean speaking for his family, and then I want to go into a little more of that.
In 2015, Ronald Exantis traveled from Indianapolis to Versailles here in central Kentucky, where he committed a series of stabbings. Those stabbings resulted in the death of 6-year-old Logan Tipton and injuries to his father and 2 sisters.
As WKYT's Jackson Plank reports, this family is still stunned. A killer is out of prison.
And to make this even worse, one of the biggest reasons the family was stunned. There are many reasons the family's stunned, and they have every right to be stunned about this. They were not brought into the parole board hearing. They were not even told that Tipton was being released until after death threats were coming out against the parole board members. So the families of the family of the victim were not even told that he was even up for release. Okay, they thought they had at least 20 years that he'd be in prison. And here it is. They're finding this out because Dean was watching Fox and found out that found out that Exantis was being released. What a way, what a shock, what a kick in the stomach to find out that your son's killer is being released. And nobody had the gall to tell you that he was being released. No warning, nothing. And this family's in fear. Obviously, they're going to be in fear because of this.
He stood up with me on top of him, just stood up and threw me 10, 15 feet across the room and went after her.
So, obviously he was violent through this whole thing, not just with the unaliving of Logan, but with the whole family. I mean, they have actual physical scars from this, not to mention the amount of emotional scars that they have from this. And they're just going to allow this person to be rolled out. It makes no sense to me. He, again, he's guilty of part of the crime, but not the other part. He was insane for one part, but not insane for the other part. That makes no sense. It's a dumb rule. It is absolutely stupid. And legislators need to be looking at this in every single state, not just Kentucky, because I guarantee you there is a loophole in every book in every state that has something for this.
Dean says immediately after Logan's death, he lost his will to live.
I laid in bed. I gave up. I gave up on life. I gave up on my family. I gave up on everybody. I just wanted to die. I've had my talks with God, because I'm not afraid to tell you all. I told the court, if I ever cross paths with him, I will kill the man. I will kill him where he stands.
As a father, 100% get his sentiment, would not blame him in the least. However, here's the rub for this. If he were to do that, he would serve close to life, if not life, in prison for that. Because he made a threat, of course, justified in my mind, probably in the minds of many people who know about this case, that if Dean Tipton were to come across Xantus and killed him, I don't think anybody would think anything less of Dean Tipton. However, he would spend much more time in prison, and he would not be afforded any of the leniency that Ronald Xantus did. So to end up this part of the case of Xantus, luckily, he made a stupid mistake, whether it's because he didn't take the time to know the law, or he just thinks he can do whatever he wants. He failed to register as a felon within 48 hours in the state of Florida. And because of the traction this case has been getting, Florida was on it. So they had actual surveillance around him 24/7 just to make sure nothing could happen. And he is currently in custody and being sent back to Kentucky, where he could go back into prison for the rest of his 20-year term because he did not follow the rules of his release to register as a felon in the state of Florida. So thank you, Florida, for being on that, and make sure that your laws in your books don't allow for any loopholes here in Kentucky. Do better with this. Seriously, do better with this. This is a man that shouldn't be out. And whether, maybe he was insane when this happened. I'll give you that. He shouldn't be out, because you can't be insane in one moment, that insane. And you're completely fine now, and there's nothing other than 6 months of parole that is going to make sure that you don't do something. So after that 6 months is up, he's free and clear to do whatever he wants. So let's move to the next case that is going to give some evidence of how bad justice has been getting in America. So I talk about 22-year-old Logan Federico, who was an aspiring teacher, who was just out with friends, came home, she was asleep, and was murdered because some guy wanted to be criminal, broke into her home to steal debit cards and whatnot, and executed her, went on a shopping spree. Okay, so here's a man, Alexander Dickey, he's 30 years old, and because of lenient policies, he's been allowed to walk the streets. Okay, so around 3 a.m., he breaks in to different homes around Logan's home, and ended up breaking into her home and got her out of bed to steal from her and executed her. So here's a man who in the last 10 years has had 40 charges, and most of them have been dismissed. And we're talking charges that aren't like speeding tickets or DUIs or things like that. We're talking about robbery, drug possession, larceny. In 2023, he pleaded guilty to third-degree burglary, and he was given time served, and his probation was ended early due to compliance. Now, again, there are people on probation for things that, are very minor, and they are allowed and afforded the opportunity to be released from probation early because of compliance and good behavior and doing what they need to. These aren't violent people. Okay, we're talking violent people. Why are violent people being afforded this? If you have got a rap sheet so long that you have this many crimes in 10 years, why are people not watching over these people more? They're violent. Okay? It's a violent thing. There's a difference between violence and victimizing people and, someone who gets a DUI or someone who has a misdemeanor of something, and obviously their rap sheet isn't showing that they're doing things previous to this, and while they're on probation, they aren't doing anything else. So there's a very big difference here. It can't be just all whitewashed into, here it is. Everybody has to follow this exact same set of rules, which, fine. If someone on probation for a DUI has to do their full term of probation and no time off for compliance, okay, as long as that's across the board. Okay, but these aren't the same kinds of crimes. This is apples and oranges here. So let's listen to Logan's dad on this. And it's a little bit of a longer clip, but I think it's important.
How many of y'all have kids? I'm just curious. Here's what I need you to do. When I tell you this story, think about your kids. Think about your child coming home from a night out with their friends, laying down, going to sleep, feeling somebody come in the room and wake them and drag her out of bed, naked, forced on her knees with her hands over her head, begging for her life, begging for her hero, her father, me, that couldn't be there. She was 5'3". She weighed 115 pounds. Bang! Dead. Gone. Why? Because Alexander Devontae Dickey, who was arrested 39 goddamn times, 25 felonies, was on the street. How about that? How good are we doing for our family? How good are you doing for your kids? He should have been in jail for over 140 years for all the crimes he committed. You know how much time he spent in prison? A little over 600 days in 10 years. He's only 30 years old. He was committing 2.65 crimes a year since he was 15 years old, but nobody could figure out that he couldn't be rehabilitated. Well, you'd have to put him in prison to see if he could be rehabilitated. Isn't that the idea of prison? But no, my daughter wanted to be a teacher. She finally figured it out 2 weeks before she was executed. And I haven't heard a damn word from Byron Gibson in South Carolina. Not one word. 4 months, no communication. His biggest concern was that he was pissed off about my interview and how I made him look on the Fox News channel with Trey Gowdy. How pathetic is that? That we're letting our 22-year-old kid visiting friends. It's all she ever wanted to do was visit friends. And she literally was executed while on her knees begging for her life.
He says it way better than I can. I can't imagine what he's going through. My kid isn't way younger than that. She's 16 years old, almost 17, and that would, I can't imagine. And the lawmaker, that he's talking about is more mad that he went on Fox and disparaged him rather than, the righteous anger of the fact that Logan Federico was unalived by this monster who shouldn't have gotten as lenient sentences as he got. And of course, I want to bring up the case of Irina Zarutska, which of course wasn't being covered that much by the media either, for a point. And luckily now it's big, and it needs to be, because again, here is a person, DeCarlos DeJuan Brown, 34. He was arrested 40 times in the same county in North Carolina on breaking and entering, armed robbery, possession of gun by a felon. And of course, he played the crazy card as well. And why was he still out? Again, this isn't someone who committed a misdemeanor here or there or had a DUI. This is someone who had violent crimes on his record, and he was still out and able to walk around and targeted this woman who didn't even look at him, who was just sitting there minding her own business, and attacked her. And now, It shouldn't have happened. He shouldn't have been out and been able to do that because he had proven himself to be a violent person. And again, if he had mental health issues, where was the help? Why wasn't he getting this? So I'm going to play a clip about this, and I do have one thing I want to disagree with the guy on here, and I'll let you hear the clip, and I'll tell you what I kind of disagree on, and it might be a little bit controversial, but I don't care.
A horrific murder on a light rail train in North Carolina caught on camera. Now local officials are facing tough questions about why the suspect was still on the street.
In the seat behind her is 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown. Watch as he slowly opens a pocket knife, then stands and without warning plunges the knife into his victim.
And this wasn't some random man with no past. He had 14 prior arrests before this attack ever happened. And somehow he was still free until the day he crossed paths with that young woman on that train.
This beautiful face and seeing her balled up, looking around, not realizing somebody had attacked her, that was so horrible.
Now I want to talk about the story of 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska, who tragically lost her life in Charlotte, North.
So it wasn't in that clip, but, what I wanted to bring up that might be a little bit controversial. The fact that these three offenders in these cases all happen to be black. Now, I am not saying anything disparaging or negative against different races. However, it has been seen, and it appears to be, that oftentimes black offenders, because of the social pressures on things, tend to be let out or had more lenient things given to them in these cases. If these were white men, I don't know that we would see that. And again, nothing disparaging against the black community. However, I do see a pattern here. Hopefully that's not what the pattern is. It is the pattern I see. But again, this is ridiculous. That even if these were white men, I don't care what their color is, why are they being allowed to do these things? After being arrested on this many violent things, this many felonies, okay? Lawyers are good at their job and great, but there are things that are just being dismissed, and I don't think it's all lack of evidence. I think it's that people want to give them a second chance or whatnot. How many second chances do we get before, we get the Logans or, the Logan Tiptons or the Logan Federicos or the Irina Zarutskas of the world that don't stand a chance against people like this. And so, again, what the hell is wrong with the justice system? These are just three cases in many, many cases that we see. And it happens to be in areas that tend to be a little bit more blue, Democrat run, that we get these very lenient sentences. And we need to look at the laws in every state, red or blue, and figure out what the hell is going on. Because there shouldn't be loopholes for people to go out and commit heinous crimes like this. These are three people that shouldn't be dead. They shouldn't have been dead anyway, but if the law was doing what it was supposed to be doing, these three people wouldn't be dead. And there are many, many, many others like them. Now, let's get to some headlines. So we've had quite the week, quite the huge week. The Israeli hostages have been released by Hamas. 4 of the deceased ones have been found and released. Of course, there are still 24 of them that need to come back, and that is part of the deal that Hamas has signed. And there's far more work that needs to happen. But in my lifetime, and there's been some good presidents in my lifetime, never has a president been able to do this, to bring this close to peace in the Middle East. So eat your words, Democrats. You thought he was going to be a Hitler. You thought he was going to be causing World War III. Well, he stopped 8 huge conflicts now, with Gaza being probably one of the biggest. And he's very close, I believe, in the Russia-Ukraine thing. He's going to be exerting more pressure on Putin because, of how Putin's playing the game. So eat your words. You have nothing to say. Where are all the Palestinian protesters, about the genocide that hasn't been happening, and now the war is done. Where are you? You're nowhere to be found. So congratulations, President Trump, on being the human being that has been needed, the leader that has been needed in the world to be able to affect change like this. You know, and you were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, and no one more deserving, I believe, in this round of nominations. And of course, because of Trump derangement syndrome worldwide, he's not getting this. Luckily, he doesn't feel he needs this, because he knows what he's doing is good, and the world can see what he's doing is good. You know, they gave Barack Obama the Nobel Peace Prize for what? For being black? That's what I think it was, because he did nothing that promoted peace. In fact, what he did promoted more divisiveness in the world, especially in America with race relations. He divided us. Nothing he did was peaceful about any of that. He just put targets on white people and made it harder to be a white person in America and made the races have a divide that wasn't there. It wasn't there. I grew up in the 80s. You know, you could make jokes with each other. You could just be around each other. Race was never brought up as a problem, and were there continuing things here and there that were being mended along the way? Yeah, absolutely. And we were getting better and better. Least racist country in the world. And thank you, Obama, for making it more racist. You did that. So if that's what you got the Peace Prize for, well, then it's not worth the paper it's written on. The person who did win it this year, though, however, is someone that I believe is for peace. Her name is Maria Corina Machado from Venezuela, and she's the opposition leader to Maduro. He's a dictator. She doesn't like that. She wants there to be democracy in Venezuela. So, for someone other than Trump to get it, here's a woman who probably deserves it. But here's what makes it even better. And Nobel Peace Prize people, take this and put it up your butt. Because she said that he's dedicating the Nobel Prize to the people of Venezuela and President Trump, because I think it's the correct thing to do, not only for what he has been doing in the last month to solve long and painful conflicts around the world, but precisely for what he's doing right now for the Americas. She couldn't have said it any better. So there's a classy woman right there who knows that, she's worked hard, but President Trump deserved this more. So Nobel Committee, you're a joke. You're really a joke. I mean, we had Greta Thunberg that was a nominee for it, which is a bigger joke. And she's even considered for that. Trump deserved it. Thankfully, someone like this woman received it, and in the grace that she deserves, that she shows, she is giving props to President Trump. So, good job, President Trump. Thankfully, the 20 surviving hostages from Israel were reunited with their families, and now they can begin the process of healing. This is just the first step in many steps, I'm sure, to get peace to the Gazan region, but to bring together as many Muslim Arab nations that he did, and all other nations that have supported this. No president that I've ever seen could have done this. And to have the almost 100% approval rating in Israel is a testament to the good things that President Trump is doing. And to, continue on with the good things President Trump is doing, he, amidst all of this busy time for him with Gaza and Israel being over in the Middle East, he flew back yesterday to ensure that he could be there on Charlie Kirk's birthday, his 32nd birthday, and the day of remembrance for Charlie Kirk, to bestow the highest civilian honor on Charlie Kirk, posthumously, unfortunately. He probably would have gotten it anyway, but posthumously awarded the Medal of Freedom. And his wife, Erica Kirk, was there to accept this honor, this huge, amazing honor, and no one more deserving, of course, than Charlie for this honor. There are plenty of people that do amazing things, but Charlie truly is a cut above anybody that may have been in line for this honor. And so I'm not playing it in its entirety. It was quite a long thing, but I'll play Erica getting the award and doing just a little tiny bit of a speech. Her speech was much longer. And so I encourage you guys to go and listen to that because, you know, what a woman with poise and grace and what a beautiful thing.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom is awarded to Charles James Kirk. Accepting on behalf of Charlie is his wife, Mrs. Erica Kirk. Charlie Kirk was one of the most influential American political figures of his generation. At just 18 years old, he founded Turning Point USA and grew it into the largest conservative youth organization in the nation. For over a decade, he tirelessly traveled the country leading a movement to restore respect for our founding principles, reawaken our national identity, and inspire a renewed spirit of religious devotion. He was one of the great debaters and communicators of his time. Despite receiving repeated threats, he remained undeterred and modeled courage, logic, humor, and grace to the next generation. On September 10th, 2025, at age 31, Charlie Kirk was assassinated while addressing a group of students. The United States honors him as a martyr for truth and freedom.
Thank you, Mr. President, for honoring my husband in such a profound and meaningful way. And thank you for making this event a priority amid the peace process in the Middle East. Thank you. Very grateful. Charlie always admired your commitment to freedom, and that's something that both of you shared. So thank you. Your support of our family and the work that Charlie devoted his life to will be something I cherish forever, so thank you. To our gracious First Lady in her office for making this event possible, thank you as well. It's beautiful. To Vice President and the lovely Usha Vance, your friendship has been an unbelievable encouragement. Thank you.
It's beautiful, and for those of you who can see, Trump is standing behind Erica, gives her the medal. And what I love about Trump in this, I mean, there's so many great things about Trump these last bunch of days, but he's standing behind her. He's not at the podium. He's not making it about him. He has some words with her that we couldn't hear, and then she goes up to give her speech, which is much longer. And I encourage everybody to go listen to it. What a beautiful tribute to an amazing man who has done so much for this country, who inspired me to do what I'm doing now. Small as it is, I'm getting my voice out there. He convinced me through his death that I can't be silent, and nobody should be silent. We need to all be Charlie Kirk. We have to all be Charlie Kirk, because what he did was amazing. And I remind you, because of that, I have become unsilenced.